In the Forum Romanum, where Rome's most prosperous slave dealers conducted their business, an aging woman stood on the auction platform. Her feet, hardened and cracked by decades of labor, were coated in white chalk, the mark of imported merchandise. Around her neck hung a placard listing her defects with brutal honesty: advanced age, diminished strength, chronic illness. Behind her, younger women drew eager bids from wealthy buyers. She drew none. In ancient Rome, youth meant value. Age meant abandonment. Roman slavery consumed between 5 and 10 million lives across the empire, and women formed a substantial portion of this population. They worked in kitchens, workshops, textile mills, agricultural estates, and elite households. Under Roman law, their bodies were property, devoid of legal personhood or protection. Unlike enslaved men, women faced dual exploitation. They were valued both for labor and for reproduction, and both forms of value declined with age. When their usefulness faded, Roman society revealed its coldest calculations about human worth. Medical care for slaves was never an act of compassion. It was an economic decision. During a slave's productive years, basic treatment might be provided to preserve the owner's investment. The first-century agricultural writer Columella even recommended food rations calibrated to output, treating human bodies as fuel for labor. But when strength declined, the financial logic collapsed. Care became an expense without return. Cato the Elder embodied this ruthless pragmatism. As Plutarch recorded, he worked slaves to exhaustion and sold them once age diminished their value, treating them like worn animals or broken tools. Plutarch condemned this mindset as deeply ungenerous, a worldview that recognized no human bond beyond necessity. For many aging women, neglect was only the beginning. By the mid-1st century CE, abandonment had become common enough to require imperial intervention. Masters unwilling to pay for treatment simply discarded sick or elderly slaves. Tiber Island, home to the temple of Asclepius, the god of healing, became a dumping ground. Women who had spent decades serving Roman households were left there to die or recover alone. Around 50 CE, Emperor Claudius decreed that slaves abandoned due to sickness or age would gain freedom if they survived. Masters who chose to kill them instead could be charged with murder. Yet the law revealed more than it resolved. It confirmed how routine abandonment had become, and how masters openly weighed death against disposal as financial options. When abandonment seemed risky or inconvenient, the slave market offered another solution. Rome maintained major slave markets near the Temple of Castor in the Forum and at the Sciapta Julia in the Campus Martius. These markets traded human beings with the same casual efficiency as livestock. Regulations existed not to protect the enslaved, but buyers. Sellers were legally required to disclose defects. For aging women, this meant public humiliation. Placards detailed failing health, weakened strength, and advancing years. Buyers inspected them closely, checking teeth, examining posture, assessing how much labor remained. Diocletian's price edict of 301 CE reveals the scale of devaluation. Even in their prime, skilled female slaves were priced lower than males. In old age, their value collapsed to almost nothing. Some owners attempted to disguise age or illness to secure slightly better prices. Others sold women knowing they would be worked to death in mills, workshops, or brutal agricultural estates. Even those not sold or abandoned found no relief. Roman law granted masters near absolute authority. Aging women continued the same labor despite failing bodies. Kitchen workers hauled water and tended fires with aching joints and dimming sight. Textile workers whose fingers stiffened or vision blurred were punished for slowing down. Field laborers were expected to match the output of the young. Failure brought flogging. Repeated punishment brought branding. Cato deliberately fostered division among enslaved women, believing unity invited rebellion. He charged fees for sexual access between enslaved men and women, monetizing even intimacy. After dinner parties, he ordered the flogging of slaves for minor lapses in service, regardless of age or decades of loyalty. For women who collapsed from exhaustion, abandonment followed. For those who spoke of suffering, punishment for ingratitude. Freedom offered little hope. Manumission functioned as a tool of control, encouraging obedience through distant possibility. But for aging women, the economics worked against them. Masters often demanded slaves purchase their freedom, a near impossibility for those with limited earning potential. Few would loan money to a woman whose labor was nearly spent. Augustus's laws allowed some women to earn freedom by bearing children, but this offered nothing to those past childbearing age, including women who had spent their youth producing children for their masters. Even deathbed manumission, sometimes granted as a final act of mercy, arrived too late. Freedom at the edge of life offered dignity, not security. Elderly freed women, without savings or family, often ended their days begging or performing menial labor, free in name only. The cruelty of Roman slavery was not chaotic, it was calculated. Masters chose the most economical path: sell aging women while value remained, work them until death, abandon them when care became costly, or deny freedom because it offered no advantage. These were not acts of individual monstrosity, but normalized decisions within Roman law and culture. The women who stood on those auction platforms were not exceptions. They were products of a system that reduced human lives to utility and profit. Rome's architectural brilliance and philosophical legacy coexist with this reality. The same society capable of monumental creation engineered systematic dehumanization. The aging enslaved women of Rome remain largely nameless, their lives unrecorded, but their suffering echoes across centuries, a reminder of the cost of systems that treat human beings as property.